Skies are grey here in Azerbaijan. Welcome though to the Baku city circuit, where we're preparing to kick off the weekend's action with a difficult and damp free practice session. Now I'd like to tell you it's bright and sunny and we're enjoying some lovely warm weather for free practice today, but unfortunately, Anthony Davidson, someone's got the weather gods in an angry mood, and I think it's going to be a damp one.
Well, don't look at me, Crofty. I was hoping for a dry session like everyone else, especially the engineers down in the pit lane. They'll be the ones with the biggest concerns, as a lot of the answers they're looking for in terms of car setup and aero balance will now have to wait until it's dry. From a driver's point of view, there's a big responsibility when driving in these conditions during a free practice session, as there's very little to gain but a lot to lose, especially if you lose control of the car and end up damaging it. And if that does happen, it can put you on the back foot for the remainder of the weekend.
Stay focused. Keep it up. We're looking at about 10 more minutes of rain. 10 minutes. So far, we're getting great data. Stay focused. At some point before qualifying, let's get our track acclimatization program complete. It'll help us identify any specific problem areas on the circuit.
An interesting practice session there then. Let's remind ourselves of the top three, who are Hamilton, Vettel and Valtteri Bottas. Practice...
Hi, how are you? I'm just passing on your qualifying goals for this weekend.
The circuit has rubbered in with practice, but this is still going to be a difficult session for our drivers as they fight for pole position. Welcome to qualifying here in Azerbaijan. And I'm here, of course, with Anthony Davidson on what has turned out to be a very pleasant day indeed. No weather to interfere, no problems on the track, so absolutely no room for error.
That's right, Crofty. It's looking good out there at the moment. Each team will have their own game plan for this session, and of course, once the cars leave the garage, they'll be under parc fermé conditions, so any last-minute adjustments need to be done right here and now. Beyond that, it's all up to the driver. Who can keep their tyres in the right temperature, who can hit their apexes. No race fuel on board these days, of course. These are the fastest cars we've had in a long, long time, and it's right here in qualifying where they're at their absolute peak. Let's get started.
The grid is all set then for the race tomorrow. But before we go, let's quickly remind ourselves of our top three, who are a McLaren, Hamilton and Kimi Räikkönen. Goodbye for now then, but we're really just getting started. Make sure to join us again for Lights Out tomorrow.
Hi, it's Emma here. Just wanted to let you know what the team are hoping for in the race.
And a warm welcome to you from Azadlik Square, heart of Baku and home, of course, to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. With high speeds, tight corners and few run-off zones, many are expecting a safety car here today, so our drivers will have to stay very much on their toes and hopefully away from the barriers. With 20 turns and a length of 3.7 miles, Baku City Circuit in the heart of the Azerbaijan capital is a real test of a driver's endurance, patience and precision. 90-degree corners through Sector 1 lead into a tightening uphill sprint as we start to circle around the old city. Then a 1.4-mile chase flat out through Sector 3 towards the finish line. Anthony Davidson joins me today as we look ahead to something just a little bit different. It's quite high speed for a street circuit here, isn't it? Do you think that's going to throw up any unexpected situations?
Well, as long as the teams can keep everything cool, I don't foresee any particular big issues from a technical side of things. I do expect the track to be quite slippery though. We've not exactly had much chance to rubber in the surface. Any street circuit also comes with its own challenges, so I think we'll be seeing a few mistakes here and there. The smart strategy would be to expect a safety car, I think, especially early on when the pack is bunched up.
So before the off, let's remind ourselves of yesterday's qualifying session with a look at the starting grid. It's McLaren in pole position then, and Lewis Hamilton completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Räikkönen, Bottas, Sebastian Vettel and Verstappen, Perez, Ocon, Ricciardo and Daniel Kvyat, Hülkenberg, Massa, Fernando Alonso and Grosjean, Stroll, Magnussen, Carlos Sainz and Jolyon Palmer, Ericsson and Pascal Wehrlein completes the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track.
You've done well to put it on pole, but we've still got work to do. Try to cover the inside line off the start. tyres will be enabled this lap. You can use it when within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone. We think there's a viable strategy change available to us. Would you like to keep to the current plan or try the new one? Understood, copy that. These tyres are the right ones. It might be time to come in and change. Don't forget, pit in this lap. Are you alright? Engine off, engine off. Go, go, go. Fernando has just pitted. That was our last stop. No more scheduled pit stops. Reports are that heavy rain will be arriving on track within 5 minutes' time. this weather. We're watching the amount of standing water on the road. For now, we think it's safe to stay with the Inter. Suggests that this heavy rain will be with us for a while now. Distance to teammate, 38.6 seconds. There's 5 laps of fuel remaining. Is 15.4 seconds. Of fuel remaining.
McLaren have pulled it off. They've won in spectacular fashion here today. So, Ant, how exactly did they set themselves apart from the pack today?
Well, keeping their tyre temperatures up in the tricky wet conditions was really important. There's not much grip out there at the best of times, and it's 10 times worse if you're out there on cold tyres. So the way they kept the rubber in its proper operating window was a huge advantage today.
Well, I'm thoroughly exhausted after the excitement of that race, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to our drivers here. They've worked hard to make it up there, and it's great to see them make their way out onto the podium. And after this round of the World Championship, here's how things look in the drivers' table. It's a good result for Lewis Hamilton, who moves further ahead at the top of the table. Moving on to the driver of the day then. Anthony Davidson, who would you go for?
Well, after a drive like that, it's got to be Nico Hülkenberg, hasn't it? Very clean, very smooth. He can be really pleased with that one.
On to the constructors then. Mercedes have extended their lead at the top of the standings. After all this drama, you'd be mad not to join us for the next race. We hope to see you then. Take care.
Hi, how are you today? The improved package has arrived. We're having it fitted in time for FP1. Have a look at the factory report.
Good morning, welcome to the Red Bull Ring. Let's join the action trackside as the cars are about to appear for today's practice session. We can see, of course, plenty of activity in the garages as we wait for the green light to get this session underway. Anthony Davidson, thank you for joining me once again. What are you going to be looking out for once the cars get out there on the circuit today?
Well, naturally, in any free practice session, you can never be sure exactly what programs the teams are running, how much fuel they've put in, and so on. So it's important to resist the temptation to draw any firm conclusions from the fastest times on the monitor. What we can do, however, is look for consistent pace over the course of multiple laps. So if someone does half a Grand Prix distance and they're consistently half a second quicker than another driver doing the same, then that's generally a good indicator of a car with a solid race pace.
Stay focused. Of fuel left.
Quick look at the classification at the end of the session then. Here are your top three. A McLaren, Bottas and Kimi Raikkonen. That concludes an interest.
Hi, it's Emma. Your qualifying goals came up in the board meeting this morning. Here's what to expect.
Thanks for joining us on this Saturday afternoon where qualifying is about to start here in Austria. So sit back and enjoy the afternoon session. And as we wait, poised for the start of what will hopefully be a thrilling qualifying, why don't you tell us, Anthony Davidson, about the things you can do to really get the most out of a car in a session like this?
Well, you're largely limited by the Parc Fermé regulations, of course. Back in the old days, pre-2004, you'd work on both a qualifying setup and a race setup over practice, and then swap them over after qualifying. So the race car was quite different at times to the qualifying car. Nowadays, though, you have to find a compromise that works for both. There are a few things that you can still
Fantastic. That was the fastest lap. Our best lap so far is a 1 minute 9.1.
So qualifying is complete and we're all set for an exciting race tomorrow. Your top three are a McLaren, Bottas and Sebastian Vettel. The grid is set then, so that just leaves the race itself. Join us tomorrow where we'll be live with all the action. And until then, it's goodbye.
Hello. I just wanted to pass on the team's expectations for this race. Good luck.
Austria, traditional home of many great things. Apple strudel, Mozart, Niki Lauda, oh, and of course, one of the finest high-speed racetracks on the planet. We're right in the thick of the season now, and the championship battle is hotting up. But if there's any race that stands to rip up the form book, it's this one. The Red Bull Ring then, 700 metres above sea level. This tough circuit may only have 9 corners, but they're fast and they're bumpy. It's a true test for any racing driver. We have 2 DRS zones, and watch out for overtakes into turn 2 as the uphill entry helps those trying to be the last of the late breakers steam up the inside. It's not going to be plain sailing for our drivers today, although with the sky falling as it is, perhaps sailing isn't too far from the truth. Anthony Davidson, could be a wet one today. Great to have you with us. What are your thoughts?
It is a touch damp, isn't it? Well, as a driver, there are 3 big things to worry about when racing in these kind of conditions: standing water, tyre temperature and visibility. And judging distance to the cars around you is really tricky when you're driving through the vast amounts of spray that these wet weather Pirelli tyres kick up.
Well then, after an exciting qualifying session yesterday, let's take a look at how the cars line up. It's McLaren in pole position then, and Valtteri Bottas will line up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Vettel, Hamilton, Kimi Raikkonen and Alonso, Verstappen, Ricciardo, Hülkenberg and Sergio Perez, Grosjean, Magnussen, Daniel Kvyat and Stroll, Palmer, Massa, Carlos Sainz and Pascal Wehrlein. Ericsson and Esteban Ocon rounds off the grid. And now it's time to head down to the track.
Right, let's be patient going into turn 1. We want to be in a good position for the rest of the race. Good luck. Let's focus now for the rest of the race. some information on Perez. It looks like the problem is terminal. They're retiring the car. In about 5 minutes, we'll then be working with light rain conditions. Caution, caution. Are too hot, you need to cool them down. Find some standing water. Teammate is 5.7 seconds. Situation is an interesting one, but I think the right call is to stick with what we've got right now. Okay, the gap behind is 4.0 seconds. There's some kind of problem with their car. Looks like it's probably about time we change tyres. It's a bit of a crossover period for sure, but the longer we stay out, the worse it's going to get. Fastest lap of the race. Keep this up. Full course caution. The safety car is out. Keep an eye on the delta. We need to keep it positive to avoid a penalty. Slow down. Maintain positive delta. Take you this lap. Release. Pit strategy complete. See these tyres through to the end now. Racing again. The safety car is in this lap. When the field accelerates, remember, there is no overtaking until the green flags. Safety car in. This rain could be with us for a while. Light rain conditions for the foreseeable future. Let's get into mix 3 ASAP. The gap behind us is 1.6 seconds. has certainly eased off for the time being, but we've still got a lot of standing water out there. We're happy for you to stay out on the inters for now. Fastest lap of the race so far. They have some kind of mechanical problem. Final lap of the race. We're considering switching to an alternate strategy. Do you want to change or stick to plan A? Got that confirmed. The gap to the car behind is 25.0 seconds. Yes, you've done it. Well done.
So, another fantastic victory for McLaren today. So, Ant, how exactly did they set themselves apart from the pack today?
Well, keeping their tyre temperatures up in the tricky wet conditions was really important. There's not much grip out there at the best of times, and it's 10 times worse if you're out there on cold tyres. So the way they kept the rubber in its proper operating window was a huge advantage today.
Our drivers are making their way out for the podium celebrations, and it's going to be McLaren picking up the winner's trophy. Congratulations to the entire team for that fantastic performance. So then, it's time to see how this result affects the Drivers' Championship. Well, the lead at the top has come down after a poor result for our points leader. And now I'd like to ask you, Anthony Davidson, who was your driver of the day?
Difficult call, but I'd like to say Esteban Ocon. He's just so gifted at getting the most out of his tyres, and he showed that today.
On to the constructors then. Mercedes have extended their lead at the top of the standings. There was also a strong showing from the McLaren team today, as they make their way up the standings. That's it for today's Grand Prix, and from Ant and I, it's goodbye, and see you again next time.
Hi, how are you today? The improved package has arrived. We're having it fitted in time for FP1. Have a look at the factory report.